Agile, yeah! All right, welcome back to the Agile Product Owner. Today we're going to start really digging into the 2020 Scrum Guide, and I wanted to start with talking about Scrum theory because it's one of my favorite aspects of the Scrum framework and one of my favorite parts of the Scrum Guide. So, talking about Scrum theory. Scrum is founded on empiricism and lean thinking. Empiricism asserts that knowledge comes from experience in making decisions based on what is observed. Lean thinking reduces waste and focuses on the essentials. Okay, so let's start there and maybe take a pause. So what is Scrum? Scrum is a framework for implementing an agile mindset in project management, essentially, in software development specifically. So, when they talk about empiricism and lean thinking, one of the things that I find interesting is to tie this back to the Agile Manifesto. So, let's take a look at that, and there we go. All right, empiricism asserts that knowledge comes from experience and making decisions based on what is observed. And of course, I am on the principles, not the manifesto. To me, this is speaking directly to the first sentence right here. We're uncovering better ways of developing software by doing it and helping others to do it. Empiricism asserts that knowledge comes from experience and making decisions based on what is observed. It's basically saying, get out there and iterate, get something into the end user's hands and get their feedback on it, and then continuously improve it. This is in direct kind of comparison to something like waterfall software development, where you're going to spend months planning up front. You're trying to anticipate every possible issue, every possible permutation, capture every business requirement up front. Then you go away with a plan and you implement it. And the output is the output. You hand it over. Obviously, you have a method for continuous improvement, but it's not happening in real time like it does in Scrum. So empiricism links directly back to the manifesto for Agile software development. Lean thinking, reducing waste and focusing on the essentials. This to me is speaking to working software over comprehensive documentation. Not that comprehensive documentation is a waste, but working software is more valuable, it's more essential, and so that's why we focus on it. And focus is a big part of Scrum, I feel. Focus, a lot of this is about generating that focus. The Scrum events, the artifacts, a lot of it is designed to create that focus that you need to be able to deliver quickly and then iterate on it. So this is really important. Scrum employs an iterative, so important. Iteration is, it wouldn't be a bad place to start with understanding that we're going to do this iteratively, meaning we're going to deliver this not once, but 10 times, 20 times, whatever it takes to get it right. And we're going to do it quickly and not in these massive projects that by the time you're done with them, it's unclear if the stakeholder will even still get value from the output. Scrum employs an iterative, incremental approach to optimize predictability and to control risk. Scrum engages groups of people who collectively have all the skills and experience to do the work and share or acquire such skills as needed. So we talked about iteration, super important. The incremental approach is super important for the exact reason that they call out here. What do they mean by optimize predictability and to control risk? Well, because we don't have a plan, or at least not as defined a plan as you would have in a traditional waterfall project, there is an element of risk. And it is very hard to predict. We can't do that in Scrum because we don't know everything going into it. And we know that we don't know everything going into it because we're transparent and because we're inspecting ourselves. And so we're going to find out what we need by doing it, by building the thing. And this happens all the time in Scrum. You're in the middle of a sprint, your team is working on delivering a solution or, a subset of a tool, whatever it might be, authentication. And, oh, I didn't realize I have to create this whole new library to be able to get this authentication to work. So you spin up another Scrum ticket, you put it into the backlog, or you pull it into the sprint, depending on the severity of it. Is it blocking the thing that you were previously working, or can you still make progress towards it? And you're doing it in this incremental way, in small, bite-sized chunks, If you're using story pointing, maybe you're using the Fibonacci sequence, and you're looking to break things down into the smallest possible pieces so that you can iterate and so that you can do it incrementally. Because we don't want to do too much up front. That's the whole point of Scrum. We don't want to be a waterfall project. We don't want to pretend like we know everything. We want to break things down, get them done, and then learn from it and adapt. And again, that's where your Scrum theory comes in. And so this iterative incremental approach helps us control risk because we're doing things in bite-sized chunks, so we're not committing huge amounts of time and resources to them only to find out that they failed. But it also helps us to optimize predictability through the use of things like story points, where over time a Scrum team can get a sense for realistically how much work can we accomplish within the sprint. And ideally, and really this is to me the only value of story points, is to assist you with planning. So your sprint planning, basically. Making sure you're not biting off more than you can chew at the beginning of the sprint. I love building small sprints up front. I hate it when my developers try to build these massive, because they're ambitious and they're excited and they're a little bit deluded sometimes about, let's get out there and do this, and we're going to pull all this stuff into the sprint, and it's never going to get done. And how do you write a sprint goal when you have this huge pile of unrelated crap in your sprint? And so I love building small sprints and then pulling stuff into them. And the Scrum, through the use of things like story points, helps us to determine, well, how much can we realistically get done in a sprint? And then you can apply that to your sprint planning to make sure that you're not over-promising and under-delivering, which is another way of mitigating risk, the risk of setting expectations incorrectly with stakeholders. Scrum engages groups of people who collectively have all the skills and experience to do the work and share or acquire such skills as needed. So this is just calling out that, your Scrum team is not just made up of developers. We've got the product owner, you've got the Scrum master, you've got the developers, maybe you've got a QA person that's in that development group, maybe even a business analyst, depending on your staffing. And we're not afraid to ask for help, and we're not afraid to pull people into the process who might not normally be there in the kind of day-to-day development process. Again, this speaks to me to this idea of transparency. We're not trying to hide anything. We're not trying to obfuscate. We're trying to reveal. Scrum combines 4 formal events for inspection and adaptation within a containing event, the sprint. These events work because they implement the empirical Scrum pillars of transparency, inspection, and adaptation. Yes, so in the next video, we're going to start talking about these 3 Scrum pillars of empiricism, and I'm going to start out with probably my favorite one, transparency. So I hope that this was useful as we start to dig into the Scrum Guide and talk about how it relates to the Agile Manifesto and the principles of Agile software development. And we will keep digging in the next video. Thank you for watching.